You're all set.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Liz Allen, and today I'll be discussing the benefits of open educational resources. I kept saying online, but I realized, oh, it's open, but they're also online. Online educational resources for college students. A little bit about my teaching background. I have taught in a number of places. I taught pre-college students with low to high intermediate academic skills in the intensive English language program at the University at Albany for about 8 years. I've been an adjunct, and now I'm a full-time instructor at Hudson Valley Community College now, where I teach native and non-native English speakers, both traditional courses and co-rec courses. And I also volunteer at the Capital District Latinos, teaching basic English skills. And today I'll be sharing my experience with ESL students in my classes at HVCC, since those have incorporated open educational resources since the fall of 2021. Here's sort of an overview of what I will be discussing today. First of all, a little history about the adoption of OER by our department, our English department, the types of ESL students that attend or may go on to attend SUNY. And then the next several items are all about how OER supports ESL students, and finally, student testimonies. So how did HVCC English department adopt OER? Well, it was pre-pandemic that this idea of using OER came to the college's attention. And in between 2020 and 2022, our department developed a pilot course that some faculty taught for both English Comp 1 and 2. And then last spring, we discussed, especially those who had used, those who had used the OER, shared their comments with the rest of the faculty, and we had a vote. We held a vote, and our faculty voted overwhelmingly to adopt OER to replace our traditional textbook, even though some of us were fond of it and are still a little bit fond of it. And then in fall 2023, that pilot became the foundation for all of our composition classes, including the ESL sections that I and a couple other folks teach here. So you're probably aware that ESL students are not a homogeneous group. And by the way, ESL is kind of, it's a term that has been debated as the most accurate to describe these students, since many of them speak more than 2 languages, often 3 or 4. But we've kept that abbreviation for now. So we have several different types of students here at SUNY. We have US citizens from places like Puerto Rico, where another language is spoken. We have international students who are here usually temporarily. They plan to return back home. We have immigrants who come with variable resources. Some of them are relatively well off, and some have next to nothing when they come to our country from all different places around the world. As you probably know, the Capital Region is an area where there are several agencies that are resettling immigrants and refugees. So we're kind of a mecca here in the state. Then we have refugees who are forced to leave their country. They come with very few resources. I remember there was a wave of students from Burma back around 2006, I believe it was, and that continued for a few years. You know, we've had waves of students from different countries in Africa, Afghanistan, relatively recently, and now Ukraine. It all follows the political developments around the world, where our refugees come from. Then we have asylum seekers. Those are people with personal safety concerns. I'm thinking particularly of a man that I work with at the Capital District Latinos. He's from Ecuador. He was very high up in the military, and it came to his attention that somebody wanted to assassinate him, so he had to leave the country, leaving his wife and children behind. He's looking for asylum. And then we have undocumented migrants who also face unstable conditions at home. I'm thinking of Junior, also in that Saturday class that I teach at Capital District. Neither of these men are at SUNY yet, but they plan to continue with their higher education. So Junior is from the state of Chiapas, where, as you probably know, there are huge problems with drug lords and gangs. And he was told that if he didn't join a gang, he would be killed. So his family, he has some family in the US, and they paid for him to cross the border. It was a very frightening experience for him. But he made it, and now he's trying to get the proper paperwork so he has his documents. This is a picture of some of my students when I worked at the intensive English language program at UAlbany. You can see the downtown campus there, the old campus. They were a happy group. And now I'm going to move on to how OER can support these students. So obviously, when the courses are online, the students can access the course from anywhere. For example, I had a student for 2 semesters. Her name was Sundus, and she, as far as I know, never stepped foot on in the US. She did all her studies from Lahore, Pakistan. Then we have students living here in the state of New York. Valerie is a Ukrainian refugee. He's currently living in New York City, working full-time and working on his associate's degree. And after he finishes that at HVCC, he wants to go on to a 4-year SUNY school. Then we have this very interesting group. You don't find this so much in non-ESL courses. I could be mistaken, but young mothers with young children who just don't have any other option except to take care of their children at home. And so, you know, they'll take my class when their children are napping, or they'll get someone to care for them temporarily, but they don't want to leave their children at home. And then more infrequent are female students from traditional cultures who aren't allowed to go on campus without a male relative. Of course, OER courses don't require costly textbooks. I think ours cost between $65 and $70, maybe more than that. So our department took a look at all different free online texts. We discovered these 4. There might be one other. And the one that I draw on quite a bit is this one for ESL writers. And here they are. Some of you might be familiar with the Lumen products. We had a terrible time, you know, getting students to buy the books, order the books, access the ebooks. That was, you know, used to take about 2 weeks just to sort of get everybody their book and get connected with the material that they needed. So OER, there's no problem there. Everything is ready to go. Also, the materials are more wide-ranging and inclusive. So you can find, for example, lots of videos on how to write, grammar, all sorts of videos. This is a series on how to write essays. This is the first of the series, How to Write an Essay Introduction from Scribber. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this is interesting. This New York Times op-ed piece was a piece that was published in our textbook that students had to pay for, but now that our library has a subscription to the New York Times, as well as many other newspapers, and so the students can read this for free. So that there's so many materials that students can access just by being a Hudson Valley Community College student through the library, and the instructor just provides the link and it's right there for them. TED Talks are another source that I like to use. And our library has 2 or maybe more databases with films. These are mostly, the films on demand mostly are nonfiction, and then we have Hollywood films and other feature films in our Swank digital campus. So how can we use OER to reduce educational disparities? Well, it is really important for ESL students because they come to us with a variety of skill levels. Some even have low literacy in their first language. That's very challenging to deal with. And all of them have gaps in their English skills. And the gaps are different. So with OER, students can close those gaps in their language skills. They can go to ESL websites, which I provide them links to those websites. They can just Google the basic grammar rules. They can Google idioms, which can be extremely confusing. I mean, what does shoot the breeze mean if you're not a native English speaker, as well as many others. Students with low reading skills can listen to audio. This is something I'm doing for the first time this semester, and I ask students if they're using it, and they are. So if you type in the text into an item in Brightspace, there's that listening feature, and students can read and listen at the same time. And I know that my students are using that. Students can also increase their background knowledge by browsing the internet. They can learn more about American history, American culture. Without knowing something about the culture and history of a country, it's very difficult to master the language. OER also can build community in the classroom. For example, students can share maps and images of their home countries, and they'd like to talk about where they're from. Some of them are from the same countries, some are from different countries. They can share images of their lived experiences in our state. And if they've traveled elsewhere in the US, they can share those experiences as well, and images. And of course, this is an English composition class that I teach, so they write about their experiences, whether they're their journeys from their home country to the US, or within the country. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit because I want to get to the student testimonies. So compared to a traditional textbook, OER offer more diversity and flexibility to ESL students. Our last textbook was pretty good at that, but OER is better. And here we are at the student testimonies. So these testimonies come from my 8 students. I just left them before I came over here. They're taking English Comp 2. They had taken English Comp 1 in a previous semester using that textbook that we all liked, but voted down in favor of OER. And this is what they had to say. So Motaz said, OERs help me save money for textbooks, which I think any college student would appreciate, not just ESL students. Stocker said, Using OER courses saved me money and weight and space in my back bag. He's still learning. He doesn't know the word backpack yet, but maybe he does now after he wrote this quote. They pick things up so quickly. Another student wrote, I'm not driving. I use bus and don't want to carry heavy textbook, especially in winter times. Another student wrote, I believe OER will improve more my background knowledge. And I have 4 more here. Joseph wrote, OER helps with terms and vocabularies. I can just look them up online. Also, OER helps the environment, less trees to make books. I thought, oh, environmentally friendly guy. And then another student wrote, I like using OER in college courses because it saved me money and making it easier to afford college. And the next student, who's from Burkina Faso, we don't usually get many students from Burkina Faso, but Bukhari wrote, for me, it is good to do both. It's interesting because he's an older student and he also was a newspaper reporter in his own country. So he was used to written text. He said it's good to do both traditional and modern textbooks because in traditional textbooks, students are more focused. I think some of the older students feel that way. And finally, why I like using OER in college. It is easier, better, and faster than traditional way. That comes from Ashjan, who's from Yemen. I'd just like to thank Tyler Kessel, the Dean of Business and Liberal Arts here at Hudson Valley, Tony Bodlowski, the chair of the English department, and especially those 8 students in my Comp 2 class who wrote those testimonies for me. And I'm going to give them a copy of this recording. So thank you very much. I don't know if I have room for questions. Couple minutes for questions.
Yeah, there's room for questions there. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or come off mute and ask.
Let's see, do I need to look at something?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
I'll watch for you.
Okay. I know at least one of my colleagues is watching me. I'm wondering if he's going to ask me a question, put me on the spot.
Liz, I'm gonna save you on that.
Thank you, Josh.
Well done, though.
No, thank you. Josh also teaches ESL students. We're just a few yards away in on this hall. Any other questions, comments?
I can kind of echo a lot of what you said, Liz. I teach a very small group of specialized students that, in addition to ESL, also have study skill and college preparatory issues that interfere with their learning. And so this OER made it so easy, instead of having them run over to the bookstore and not have the money and being underprepared. Generally speaking, this is just one less thing they have to worry about. And then because it's a small class, I'm able to custom things. I don't need to, it's not, if this book isn't working, I'm not stuck with this book. We can quickly change to something else and just, change the link or, print out something different. When you have a textbook and not an OER, it makes that a lot more difficult to do. So just flexibility, I found really helpful. And in this case, my students are generally mostly all from Afghanistan. And so there's specific grammar that I'm really going to pay more attention to that I wouldn't have if, let's say, my students were all of Romance languages, or if their first language is Chinese or Korean, which is something more with articles. Farsi has articles, so we don't need to spend too much time. That's not usually the grammatical problem they're going to make. And because of that, then I'm able to quickly go to my grammar sections and add new things like on prepositions and those kind of things, rather than doing what a textbook normally would have. So at least in our department, I think we did the right decision for our ESL.
I think we did the right thing too.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate your time.